Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. Lots for you in this episode. We're going to hear from Colin James on the progress of the regional Super 50 being played in Antigua. Ayana Holder and Wayne Holder will be here as well, and they will share their views. But they'll also join me in having a bit of a chat about the way forward for West Indies cricket after the remarkable events of the tour of Bangladesh and that 2-0 victory. Where do we go from here? They will share their views on that issue. And we're also going to hear from Roland Butcher, who will update us on the project in which he is a part of in terms of that ACE project that we would have discussed with you sometime last year. Just to remind you, though, that you can like us on Facebook, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and keep abreast of all that is happening on Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
At IGS Insurance Brokers, honesty and integrity are paramount. We are your general insurance brokers for life.
We deliver packages tailored specifically for you. Give us a call at 429-8810 or visit our offices for a consultation with our friendly, well-trained staff.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
You may be locked down, but we've not locked you out. Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us.
Following the contest between the Trinidad and Tobago Red Force and the Barbados Pride, some may say a no contest, we had a chat with Colin James, and he brought us up to date with he shared with us, I should say, his insights on the progress of the regional Super 50. So the regional Super 50 continues with teams doing battle in Antigua. In a shortened tournament, you're accustomed to having at least 2 rounds or so, or maybe even a competition played in groups. But this year, obviously, with the various challenges brought on by COVID, a reduced competition, but thankful nevertheless to get some cricket, and the teams are doing battle. We'll be joined by Colin James, who is fortunate enough to be among the chosen few to watch the game, to be at the ground, unlike Ayana Holder and Wayne Holder. Myself, we've got to follow from a distance. Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk, Colin.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be among a Barbadian audience. I consider Barbados to be a second home.
Fair enough. Well, that is certainly a very flattering and pleasing comment. I don't know if you would want to identify with Barbados, though, in terms of Barbados's performance in the Super 50 so far this season.
Well, identify in terms of the sense that I'm kind of disappointed with the performance of the team. I was expecting much more from the Barbados team. Even more so, not from the point of view that I was saying that the Hope brothers wouldn't have made an impact on the tournament, but after they had contracted COVID and they had been replaced in the tournament, I was expecting to see the replacements really coming to the fore. But so far they have not. And I can't understand why a very talented team like Barbados is performing this way. And Someone raised the point the other day about the whole question of whether or not when West Indies or international players come back to play for their domestic teams, if they have the same sort of motivation or commitment to perform. And I tend to believe that the Barbados team have not performed to their true potential. Too many of the international players have not put up their hands and asked to be counted. And in the game against Trinidad and Tobago, I was expecting to see a much better performance. And from the point of view to that, they had scored over they steadily with Ireland over 300 to win. Never expected that Ayana Holder, who has been touted as one of the future for West Indies fast bowlers, one of the future players for West Indies in terms of his fast bowling prowess. Never expected him to bowl that poorly in the tournament, and even today against the Trinidad and Tobago team, he just wasn't himself. I think Barbados has lost a good player in Harding. I was very impressed with him. He seems to be a very athletic bowler. I think he would have made a difference for Barbados in the two matches that preceded the first game. But be that as it may, there's still sufficient enough talent in the Barbados team that they should have performed much better than the last two matches.
So the Barbados team certainly, yes, underachieving. I even think though, in fact, in my prior discussion with Ayana and Min, I think we were under the impression that they could very well still qualify if they win the remaining two matches, depending on what happens in the other games.
I think there's still sufficient talent in the Barbados team to bring them through in the last two matches. Although Royston Chase performed well with the ball today, he needs a big innings in the next two matches to continue to be among the thoughts of the West Indies selectors, not only just for the Barbados team, but he needs to look at his international cricket future. Shamar Brooks, I think he's due a big innings, and he's a talent that not only me and others in the Caribbean, but none other than Clive Roy thinks that should be in the West Indies team. Unfortunately, he didn't go to Bangladesh, but he needs to come big. And the captain, Jason Holder, too much talent there for him not to really come up with a big innings or maybe a 3-4 wicket haul, even a 5 wicket haul when he bowls. And I still believe Ayana Holder has enough ability in him that he can come to the fore and do well for Barbados.
Well, I know that Vin and I am like myself, we've been following closely from this distance. So, Vin?
Well, hi, Colin. Welcome.
Hi, Wayne.
Good man. Well, to start off from you zeroed in on the generally lackluster performance of the Barbados team, and like I said, you zeroed in on a Ayana Holder who has been very disappointing in the tournament up to this date, and it reached a new low today. Actually, the other two matches, the first two matches, it weren't quite. He wasn't at his normal best, but he's still below what we normally expect from him. But today was an absolute horror show, and I mean nothing went right for him. He wasn't bowling with any pace. His execution was off. Number of wides. He was offering those free hit boundary balls at least once, twice every over. Today was an absolute horror show. But essentially, when you look at the Barbados performance, though, I don't think that the bowling generally can be wholly held responsible for the results that Barbados got. If you look at the performances in the three matches with the bat, you would have noticed that in the first match, the innings never got going. After restricting Guyana to 240, which was a gettable total on a easy pace track, small ground in 50 overs, the innings never got going. Of course, the rain came and the DLS came into play, and we lost that one. But I think the batsmen lost that one. In the other two matches, we also had situations where Barbados put themselves in very good positions. But the finishing in both innings, both against the Leewards and against Trinidad, the finishing left quite a lot to be desired. Barbados lost something like 6 wickets for less than 60 runs in the last 9 overs in this game against Trinidad and Tobago. And it was something similar when Barbados seemed, I think Barbados lost their 4th wicket at 250 odd with 9 overs to bowl in the game against the Leewards, and barely made it to 300 win at 320, 330 seemed to be very much on the cards. So I think the batting has to take its portion of the blame for not being able to capitalize on very good positions in all three matches.
I agree with that assessment, especially today when you had, I think it was Jonathan Carter along with Ashley Nurse at the crease. I want to believe that, I was expecting Barbados to score upwards of 280 in this game. I think in the middle overs, anything between the 25th and the 35th over, that they really did not dictate the strike as much as they wanted to, or dictate the scoring rate as much as they could have. And this is the problem I'm having with West Indies batsmen. They tend to allow the spinners especially to settle on a good line and length and a good rhythm rather than trying to work them around, picking up the ones and the occasional twos. They tend to want to defend against the good deliveries when they could have just pushed them deliveries into the gaps and get a single, or maybe try to work them behind square or in front of square for twos. And this is where I think the Barbados batting let down. You look at Christopher Barnwell and an Anthony Bramble in the Ghana team, and although they're power hitters to some extent, they were still playing with soft hands and getting ones and twos when they played against Jamaica last evening at the Coolidge Cricket Ground. So yes, Barbados batsmen especially needs to understand that it's not only just about the boundaries, but if you can get 10 runs by getting two runs off 5 to 6 balls and over, it's 10 to 12 runs and over as opposed to trying to hit over the top. So sometimes in the middle overs when the spinners might be looking to get on top, you can get 10, 12 runs and over by just getting two runs per ball per over, or even the occasional 4 or the occasional 3. So that is something that our West Indies batsmen have to look at. When you especially look at the Australians and even maybe the English and Indian batsmen, if the boundaries have been hard to get, they find a way to work the ball into the gaps, into the open field to get not only a single, but twos and threes. And I've noticed this for a period of time now over the years that our West Indies batsmen, if they're being bogged down, they tend not to play with the soft hand. And the former West Indies and Leeward Islands leg spinner Anthony Martin was making that point, especially when the Leeward's batsmen found themselves up against the Jamaican spinners. Sometimes you have to play with a soft hand, use the wrist, turn the ball around square, maybe through square, maybe through cover, maybe through extra cover, and get maybe 2 runs instead of just playing the ball, trying to play a forcing shot and playing it straight to the fielder. So it's something that our coaches really need to look into. And I believe this comes from how the coaches organize their practice sessions. They need to get our batsmen to bat against well-set fields. Apart from the net sessions and apart from the different skirmish they would have in their practice sessions, organize and devote a practice session towards actually batting and setting fields that are tight so batsmen can understand how they can manipulate the ball and get the ball through a well-set field and get runs on the board.
Ayana, what's your take on what has been going on in the Super 50?
Watching Barbados in particular, I am struggling to understand what the plan is exactly. I know that Shamar Holder has come under the microscope because of the potential that we all know that he has, and he has been inconsistent. And I think that's because the role has not been defined, and that has been clear throughout the entire team, because I don't think that we really have a white ball specialist as we identified. We've not been finishing well. And that's a concern for the team, because in the first game, we know they never got off to a good start. And the second and the third game, they should have made more runs, but there was a collapse towards the end. There wasn't a person to really come and take the game away from the opposition. You expect the batting side to capitalize on the last 10 overs in the innings, and all we have been doing is losing wickets. So that has been disappointing. And looking at the Trinidad outfit, I think that the Trinidad and Tobago Red Force team, they've been seeing games as an experiment, because they've been changing around the batting order when they feel like, just to give guys time in the middle. And I think it's because they know the depth that they have in their team. And I think that is something that, not to experiment, but I think that the other teams should probably watch how the Red Force unit goes about their game and how they build innings and really finish in the last 10. They have not batted first in the tournament as yet, but we can see how Trinidad builds their innings so that in the last 10, players like Puran, Pollard, they have the opportunity to really blast. The Jamaica Scorpions team, I think that they're missing a bowler or something in their middle order. They have not really, I expected a bit more from the Jamaica team. O'Shane Thomas has looked a bit rusty, in my opinion. I wonder what work he has been putting in. All in all, I think that there's still a lot of cricket to play to see the teams who will go through towards the semifinals in this year's Super 50.
Colin, you may not want to actually pick the semifinalists at this point in time because, as Ayana said, there's still cricket to be played. But in your opinion, really, who's shaping up in terms of the teams that look as though they mean business?
Well, definitely Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago would have put themselves into the semi-final slots. From a purely parochial point of view, I would want to see the Leewards in as the home team, the host territory for this tournament. And I think just looking at the other three teams, the Leewards, Guyana, and Jamaica, I believe that in terms of the talent pool and the ability of the players, I think Barbados will get in there along with the Leeward Islands, as well as Guyana and Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago, sorry.
Colin, thanks so much for sharing those insights with us. Continue to enjoy the competition. You continue to be the envy of many of us who don't have the privilege to be there.
Oh my.
But of course, I think we all understand the challenges of that at this point in time.
Yes. The only thing I'll hold you to, Philip, if I can end with this, is saying that you'll have some fish cakes for me whenever I come to Barbados again.
Fish cakes are never a problem to find in Barbados. Especially for good people like yourself. I'll put Ayana on it immediately.
Actually, what I was going to suggest, though, just don't ask Philip to make you the fish cakes. That's all.
Well, I have a favorite spot in Barbados where I can get them from.
Oh, okay. So we'll make sure you get there.
Somewhere in Dover.
Okay, we'll make sure that you get there. That would probably be the safest option.
Okay, take care.
Thanks again, Colin.
Anytime.
We'll be back on Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
You may be locked down, but we've not locked you out. Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us.
Welcome back. Well, I believe Wayne Holder and Ayana Holder that I know are still very much in celebration mode after the remarkable performance of the West Indies side led by Kraigg Brathwaite in defeating Bangladesh 2-0. And no doubt fans throughout the region and Caribbean fans of West Indies cricket, wherever they are in the world, elated and still in celebration mode. But it doesn't end there. It's a fair question after all of the celebrations, Wayne Holder and Ayana Holder, to ask, what now? Or what next? Wayne?
I must admit that the entire series, those two test matches in Bangladesh, really took me to a tremendous high, quote unquote high. And I mean, you couldn't want for more than that tremendous victory in the first test out of nowhere, out of nothing. And then to cap it off, to capture the series in the manner in which the team was able to do it. I mean, that in itself was would have been asking a bit too much if that is what we were asking at the beginning of the series. I mean, here is a story of a team almost rising from the ashes, rising from nothing to perform at a level beyond anything that may have been anticipated. So yes, I was on a tremendous height. Having come down somewhat from that height and now looking towards the immediate future, I know more soberly reflecting on the immediate future. The first thing that I would want to note, like I've said before, is that this does not solve the numerous problems that West Indies cricket surrounding West Indies cricket. And when I talk about West Indies cricket, I'm not even talking about the politics and the off-the-field antics. I'm talking about West Indies cricket as on the field. And generally, our performances have been below par, to put it mildly. You know, we've been way below the standard expected. So, and this series is not going to all of a sudden change all of that. What this series victory did for me, though, with the reserve coming to the fore and showing that we do have quality reserve, is giving me hope. There is hope that all is not lost and that there are young cricketers, young men in the Caribbean who are still hungry. Because one of the things that has gone out of West Indies cricket for me, previous to this tour, and generally, is that hunger for success, that hunger for players to reach the highest standards. And this team led by Kraigg Brathwaite really displayed a kind of tenacity that has been somewhat lacking in the so-called main players, big boys, whatever you choose to call it. So that it gives me hope. And immediately, it is going to be very, very interesting now to see how the authorities, the management of West Indies cricket, blend this quote-unquote reserve team with the incumbents who would have been shoo-ins and entitled picks into the West Indies team before this series. I think that is going to be very, very interesting for me.
Ayana.
I would have said before that I love the competitive culture that is being created in West Indies cricket. And it, as we said, the entitlement that certain players had towards maintaining a play in the test team, the selectors now have someone else to choose. You know, there are other performances there that you can look at and say, well, okay, I'm going to give this guy a chance. And I think that that's a very good thing. Form will come into play. I don't know what the preparation is going to be like for the series, but I do hope that they can have probably intra-squad warm-up to really get the best 11 out there without actually changing up too much in the side. The side in Bangladesh, I thought they gelled really well. I don't know if it is because of the time that they spent together, because the one-day team, they all traveled the same time, and while the one-day team were in action, some of the test guys were in their own, and still in their bubble. And I really hope that that's something that we can maintain and carry forward, because it really seemed to have made a difference in the outcome of the performance for that team on that tour.
In fact, when you said preparation, I guess you were hinting at the Sri Lankan tour.
Yes, that is the next tour scheduled to play here in the Caribbean, hoping that all goes well and it can come off so that we can get some home cricket going at home.
You know, when you alluded to, you mentioned, you said something well led by Kraigg Brathwaite. And what I noticed about Kraigg Brathwaite, and it's not just a question of saying this because of the outcome, it was right there. You can look back at the video. And I think we saw a more energetic and almost animated Kraigg Brathwaite in the field. You know, we've seen Kraigg Brathwaite lead the Barbados side for years and has done so with a degree of success as well. But he seemed more energetic to my mind in the field, even in his batting, very positive and so on. And one has to wonder, first of all, maybe what may have brought about that obvious change. And secondly, the extent to which that may have made a difference in terms of the impact on his charity.
Well, yes, because you mentioned about his animatedness in the field, but it was also in his approach to batting. There was a freshness to Kraigg Brathwaite's batting, especially in that first innings in the first test. I think that's when he got 70 odd, yes. And it tells me though that Kraigg Brathwaite seems to have been motivated with not only by being captain, but being captain of this unit. A fresh, very, very much inexperienced lineup. I think he saw his role as being crucial to this team, and that in this team, he had to lead from in front. It wasn't a matter of him having a number of proven, experienced players around him who are supposed to know the job and know exactly what they're supposed to do.
And pretty much that's the reality that he would be facing in the Barbados side for many years. At that level, playing with players who were pretty experienced. You're talking to people like Ashley Nurse, for example, who's been around a long time, and Shamar Brooks and people of that ilk. So I think that strengthens your point. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So I thought that he's extra motivated because he saw himself as having to lead, not only captain, because the captain can set the field, the captain can change the bowlers. But I thought that he saw it as his role to lead that team, to lift the spirit, and to be that figure up front and center leading this team. And he did a marvelous job, I must say. It was, as I said, so on Kraigg Brathwaite-like, his whole approach.
I could agree with you because I've always seen Kraigg Brathwaite as a pretty defensive captain. In fact, let me make the point though that international captains, from my observation, I watch quite a bit of cricket. Generally speaking, most of them are defensive. That is the nature I find of international captaincy nowadays in Test cricket. So Brathwaite doesn't necessarily put him out there as being worse than anybody else. But to my mind, he's always been pretty defensive. I didn't really pick that up in this series. I found that he was more innovative. In fact, many people were impressed with the fact that he brought himself on and took responsibility on that final day, what turned out to be the final day, and picked up those 2 wickets. That's fine because he was able to pick up those 2 wickets. Had he not done that, then there'd been a different story. But what impressed me most, Ben and Ayana, was when he came back towards the end and picked up a wicket. Not that he brought himself back, not that he picked up the wicket, but that after doing so, he was mature enough to recognize, you know what? Let me go back to my main people. And he pulled himself out of the attack. And that, to my mind, was a sure sign of his maturity.
Yes, Philip, definitely. I thought I was very mature, and I guess you could say responsible too, because he knew that, okay, I did what I have to do here. I'm going to give it back to my 2 main bowlers who I expect to complete this job for me. And as a leader, sometimes you have to give your colleagues or whatever the support in order to go and fulfill that role that you expect them to play. And I thought that was brilliantly done. I actually saw someone say that Kraigg was probably inspired by the win of his horse War Eagle. So Kraigg probably is in a winning season right now and enjoying it. But in all honesty, though, I agree with you, Philip, that Kraigg has been a bit defensive as a captain. Sometimes you will question what are they doing? They're just letting the game stay open for the opposition to get on top. And he looks like he has been working on that. I don't know if it's because of the young team, so he's able to have more of an input in what actually happens and discuss with the players, the plans, etc. But it was refreshing, to be quite honest.
I saw Kraigg Brathwaite, the leader of men, something that I personally never recognized in him before. That made the difference.
But moving forward, though, Dwayne and Ayana, certainly the leadership of Kraigg Brathwaite is impressive. But what really needs to happen now as we move forward, we're hoping that things work well with Sri Lanka, and there's cricket to be played. So what now, really?
But I think that what should result out of everything that has happened of late is that the West Indies should be able to put out what is regarded as, on form, the best team that we can possibly come up with. I think that should be one of the positive results of this this outcome. I would hope the authorities, the cricketing West Indies cricket authorities, have always will say that there will be no recriminations for persons who opted out of touring for their various reasons. But I think now that we've got all the players in a pool, and we should be able to utilize all those resources to the best of their ability. West Indies are playing against Sri Lanka in the West Indies. I think home advantage will count for something. And I am in an anticipatory mood. I am in a good mood of anticipating that the West Indies will also do well against Sri Lanka when that series gets going, especially in the tests.
Ayana, what do you think needs to be done to ensure that continued progress by this team?
I think that the preparation and the planning needs to mirror what we've seen in Bangladesh. I think that the management should be applauded for the work that went into that series. I saw certain plans against batsmen, chances being created, taking those chances, etc. And I think that that's something that we need to carry on into the next series. It probably will be a headache for the selectors to actually select the squad. We're coming back home, so you expect that we'll go back to a stronger pace unit. So all in all, I hope that we don't, as I said before, I hope that we don't interfere with this team too much. And I think that the management will have some very healthy discussions in selecting the squad for the next series. Some of the guys probably are scratching their heads, asking themselves, will I get a chance? What do I have to do? And I think that that's good. It's healthy competition, but I as we said, I am in an anticipatory mode as well. And I think that we are going to be in for some surprises.
Well, you know what? I think we would agree, and you yourself, Ayana, being an umpire, may very well agree that umpires have a thankless job. Very seldom do you say well done to an umpire, but the first mistake, is brought up. And I think selectors rank that way as well. How often do you say well done selectors when a team does well? But I think that this is an occasion where we've got to, or I shouldn't say we've got to, but for my part, I will certainly say publicly well done to the selectors, because many people had their reservations. I know I did. And it doesn't mean that I think my reservations were not valid because the West Indies team won. But the selectors did what they felt they needed to do. And they got the outcome that they were trying to achieve and that we all hope would be achieved. And I think it's in order to say publicly to the selectors, to Roger Harper and his men, well done.
I was very harsh in criticizing the selectors for the botch job that they did with the one-day site. Okay. I hold no apologies for that. Likewise, I commend them on the selection for the testing, because what was actually happening here is that you were choosing the best available. I do not think that happened with the one-day site. We did not choose the best available. For some unknown reason, the selectors seem to have gotten the idea that we could do without 10 of our best players and still select two separate sides, a separate one-day side and in fact,
when you're not alone in that, I heard the theory put forward by many people that it would have made more sense to have used the test team really as a nucleus for the one-day team.
Like I said, the best available people would have seen
that was said before ball was won.
Right, would have seen a side made up mainly of the test squad. Yes, there are those players that you would have needed to come in to join ranks, and not everyone in the test team could have gone. Shane Mosley, for instance, would not have been in my one-day side. Shannon Gabriel would not have been in my one-day side. I would have left Kemar Roach out of my one-day side. Yes, I would have done that. nucleus of that team to play in the one-day series would have had to be a number of the members of the test team who were the best players available. That is my point. So well done to the selectors for the test team. And as it turned out, even if the squad had lost that test series, we really could not hold it against the selectors. But I have not zero for the selectors for that one. They say that is the selector.
Yeah, well, I think Ayana is laughing too much for me to burn, and so but I'll just follow up on what you were saying. Yes, the one day side really don't know what the thinking was there, but and I do agree with you that regardless of the outcome, there wasn't a whole lot you really could have faulted with the test side. In fact, my critique or my criticism of the test side, if it can be called criticism, I felt that Shamar Holder should have been in that side, and it was not so much from the point of view of winning and losing. I believe that at this stage I throw the question to you, what next, what now, what where do we go from here? And I still feel that West Indies cricket is at a stage where we need to be building a side. And we often talk about rebuilding. And that rebuilding is often used as an excuse for losing. I don't see rebuilding as losing and saying that we are losing because we're rebuilding. I see rebuilding as a process that includes certain things. And part of what it includes is the development of players. So therefore, you've got to have a spinner. You can choose the one you want, whether you want to choose. Well, after this performance, I don't think you can look beyond the ones who perform. But you can choose who you think is your best spinner, whether it be a Cornwall or Warrington or Firmwall. You choose who you think is your best spinner. And you invest in that spinner. And that spinner's got to get the opportunity to play on a regular basis. Shamar Holder showed in the Tour of New Zealand that he was ready, he had places to go. And I felt that process needed to continue. And that was really the basis for my criticism. So that's just one issue. Outside of that, I thought that, in terms of the batting, I don't think there's much more that could have been done in terms of selecting the team.
Just to go back to what we said about the one-day team, I think that this Super 50 is going to set up really well to see the team that West Indies puts up for the ODI team. And to follow on what you said, Philip, we have to remember that there's a World Cup coming up in, I think, 2023. And that's 2 years from now. So we have to start to look to build that unit working towards 2023. Many times I've seen West Indies, like we have annual plans. We don't have strategic plans to run for a length of time. And in the end, it comes back to haunt us. And I think that we are at that stage right now for the one-day international team to build a unit in working towards the 2023 World Cup. And it's interesting to see some of the youngsters playing in this year's Super 50, putting in performances and putting up their hands to be noticed. And I think that it will be important, very important, to plan, especially working towards that global tournament, because I think that we did a poor job at it in 2019.
Okay, guys, so there we have it. What next for West Indies cricket? Well, I can tell you, as long as that Sri Lanka tour comes off, we will find out sooner rather than later. When we come back, Roland Butcher and the ACE project. Well, Roland Butcher is not new at all, not a stranger to anything cricket. Let's talk. Good to see you again, Roland. Welcome to Anything Cricket Let's Talk once again, and all the best for 2021.
Yeah, thanks, Philip, and good to see you and Ayana, and same to both of you. Hope that 2021 is better for you than 2020.
Yes, I mean, I hope that for all of us, really, especially that it relates to COVID-19. Roland, the last time we chatted about cricket, we were talking, that was off camera, about the ACE program, which has been rolled out, which was rolled out in England last year. And your name is connected to it maybe you would want to explain to our viewers your connection, first of all, your perspective of what it is, your explanation of what it is, and your connection in terms of the ACE program.
Yeah, Philip, the ACE program, as you know, was rolled out officially last year when they received funding from Sport England and other entities, quite a substantial amount of funding for the next 3 years. And really, the ACE program was born out of the desire by Ebony Rainsford-Brent, who is the director of women's cricket at Surrey County Cricket Club, ex-England women's international, really the first black woman to play for England. And obviously she had been very concerned with the fact that across first-class cricket, etc., in England, that there is a shortage of black players, whether it's male or female. And obviously she was able to get her County Surrey to be involved with starting this program out. And the first time they advertised for people to come from the location, which is in South London. As you know, where Surrey County Cricket Club is located, Kennington Oval is in South London and a predominantly black area. And it is rather surprising that even though it's located in such an area, that there's so few black players, either in academies or on the first class circuit or in the Surrey County Cricket Club. So they then started, advertised for kids to come, and we're very surprised that over 100 kids turned up for these trials. The standard was extremely high. Out of that, a number of players were immediately given academy contracts because of the quality of their player. But the interesting thing about it was that on reflection, they realized that these kids were not involved in a club. They didn't get formal training. They didn't have coaching, etc. And they were on just pure talent alone, were able to show what they were capable of. So that really pushed it a little bit further. And then obviously it's become a charity now, and it's very, very important for the future of black players in England. Now, my role, I was asked by Ebony, along with Sir Trevor MacDonald and Michael Holding, to be patrons of the ACE program, which we are. I'm very proud and delighted to be a patron of the ACE program, because I see it as something very well worthwhile, something that I think was needed in England for a very long time. And you may recall, Philip, that in recent time there has been quite a bit going on in England in relation to racism in cricket, and the ECB are now really stepping up to try to ensure that there are opportunities afforded for black and Asian people, not just in the game of cricket itself, but on the boards, etc., etc. So the ACE program really has a very, very important role to play in this whole development. It's embraced by the ECB because they have recognized that yes, the players coming out over the years that and discussing it now openly now, the likes of Michael Carberry and others, that there is a problem and it is something that they're trying to deal with. I think the ACE program will produce those type of players. They have a director of cricket now in Chevy Green, who has been with it right from the beginning. They've just advertised for a coach as well. There's coaching going on at the moment. So the likes of Simon Jackson, who you might remember, Philip, played for CCC. Simon Jackson is very much involved and one of the coaches with the program. So it is going on and going on well.
Roland, with these programs and academies, how important is it for youngsters to understand the economic value that the sport can bring, whether they play at an international level or only play professional cricket or become a coach, a physio, stuff like that?
Well, it's very important for these young people who are getting involved as players, etc., with the ACE program, because you know, they come from predominantly areas that are not that affluent. So the surrounding areas to Kennington Oval is, you know, it is very, it's an impoverished area. So opportunities for these youngsters are very limited. So this really represents a fantastic opportunity, and you know, it will be made known to them that, you know, here is your opportunity really to not just develop yourself, but move your families forward by being as good as you can, getting into the first class game, making a way for yourself, for your family, and really, you know, for Black people in general. So, you know, they've got an extremely important role to play, because, you know, up to now, opportunities have been very, very limited for them.
Since the program, it originated at Surrey, if I am correct, right? Right. So
Yeah.
what's the plan to branch out into the other counties?
Well, I mean, that branching out has started already, because as a result of that initial start, and now this funding by Sport England, which is, I said, for a 3-year period, you have now got that Warwickshire County Cricket Club have got involved, and the same program now is going to be rolled out in Birmingham. So really, what I see the future for something like this is that, you know, I would like to see these programs roll out in all the major cities that there's a huge Black population. So as I said, Manchester is another area that it really needs to be. You know, Reading is a heavily populated Black area. The likes of Bristol in Gloucestershire. So there are about 4 or 5 areas of England that's, you know, very, very big, lots of Black people. And the problems that the Black people have in those areas is really the access to training, the access to playing, because most of them are not part of any club, and really the opportunity to excel. So by setting up these schemes in these areas, it certainly now would open up those opportunities for all of those people to excel.
Roland, recently we've seen virtual global awareness, if you will, and of the whole issue of race. I said global, not just England, but in a number of countries, players are coming out and speaking of their experiences and so on. To what extent does the ACE program involve this reality, I guess you have to call it, of the challenges that minorities have faced and to some extent still face in international cricket?
Well, it is very important. I mean, particularly in England, most of the racism or etc. was very much hidden. I think what has happened recently, certainly with the whole Black Lives Matter movement right across the world, it is really, you know, it's pushed this issue from underneath the table to above the table. And the ECB, who is in charge of cricket in England, they now recognize that, yes, there has been a problem. This thing has been under the table. The gorilla really has grown up now and has crawled out from under the table. So in England now, they're doing their best to try and wrestle with this situation and try to get it improved. I think having done that, there will be, I think, a trickle-down effect around the world. You know, we're seeing it around the world. You know, the same thing is happening. What would happen is, you know, I think more and more cricket boards will then really look at themselves and ask the question, you know, are we also, or have we been complicit in this as well, and try to do things to better the situation.
So, Roland, in terms of, well, you talk about the you know, the various countries and so on addressing it, but how exactly would ACE attempt to attack this issue? Would it be in terms of preparing players for what lies ahead? Would it be a question of maybe education so that people generally can have a different perspective rather than the narrow perspective that some may know? How do you think that really can be addressed?
I think the biggest thing really is to try and level the playing field so that everybody has the equal opportunity. Clearly, up to now, the playing field hasn't been leveled because if you look across the board, and I'm looking in England, if you look at the first-class counties, if you look at the minor counties, you know, not just the teams, but if you look at the committees, the boards, there's a huge underrepresentation of Black and Asian people in those situations. So what you need to do really is to give people the opportunity to sit on boards, to be on committees, and you know, to be heard, to be part of the decision making, and really to diversify. And the benefits really will be huge because, you know, just think, currently, you know, the England side is very well diversified right now. I mean, you've got West Indians, you've got Indians, you've got people who have had South African birth, New Zealand, etc. Now, all of that comes together, in my estimation, to, you know, helping that team to be, you know, a very balanced side. So the benefits are there really for England if they can get this right, and really not just will they only get the results from it, but, you know, just think how many people they would empower, you know, because if people from the Black community see people sitting on these boards, you know, it will empower them to want to do it. And as you know, once somebody starts something, you know, it lights a spark. People feel, well, if he can do it, or if she can do it, I can do it as well. And that's what you want, really. You want to light that spark so that people are really believing in themselves that, yes, I can achieve this. But that's what they need to do, really. Level the playing field so that everyone has a fair chance.
Roland, you know, it's not always easy to talk about these things. But would you have had any personal experiences when you played, you know, that showed some evidence of being a victim of racism, or if not a victim, observing others who may very well have been victims?
Well, as I said, you know, some like in England and other places, you know, things are done very subtly. So while it may not be very open, where you can say, well, that is a case of racism, you know, sometimes things are done in a way where you're denied the opportunity, and then you really have to question as to why that opportunity was denied. When you know within yourself that you are perfectly well qualified or more qualified than the individual who eventually, you know, gets whatever position it is that they're aiming for. So there's things like that, you know, and you have to question really, you know, really why weren't you given the opportunity to advance? Is it because of your color? All the other boxes were ticked. So really, it then comes down to something like that, you know. And you know, there's no secret that, you know, and it's coming out now. I mean, in all sports, you're seeing it popping out left, right, and center. That is the case. You know, I think perhaps on a par or maybe worse is something like professional football in England, where professional football in England is heavily populated by Black players. But then when you hang up those playing boots and you try to look at a board or a coaching bench or managerial situation, and you see no one of any color, and there'll be some fantastic Black players from all over the world, you know, who have graced the football fields in England, but it's not represented on the touchline or in the boardroom, you know. And these guys are just as qualified. They go through the same coaching qualifications as all the other people, but yet they're denied the opportunity, you know. So I've seen it happen to the likes of people, John Barnes, you know, Dwight York, all these guys who've been fantastic players, but they cannot even get an interview, you know. And that tells you that if players of that level, players who have been extremely successful, because, you know, Dwight York was hugely successful as a player at Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world. You know, he was successful as a player. The team was, so he knows what it takes to win. Same thing, John Barnes was a revelation for Liverpool and England. And these guys, you know, can't get an interview. So that tells you something is going on, that perhaps doesn't meet the eye.
And Roland, what advice would you give to persons such as Dwight York and those guys, the upcoming athletes who would aspire to be in managerial positions? What advice would you give them to continue aspiring to get those
Well, I mean, you
positions?
can never give up, because you know you've got to be in it to win it. I've always said that. You know, if you give up, then it will continue. You will never ever get an opportunity. I think you have to keep knocking. You have to keep knocking on that door. And I think what has to happen is that when someone of color gets the opportunity to be in those positions, I think they've got to be a role model, and they've got to be successful and really open the door for others to follow. So, you know, what that will do is, as I said, once they get in the door, they're successful. Other people will think, hang on, well, you know, Philip Hackett can do it, so I can do it as well. So it is important for the individual who gets the opportunity to make something of it. And then for the others, really, all of us outside of that, really, you've got to keep saying, I'm going to keep knocking, I'm going to keep knocking. You just cannot give up.
Thanks very much, Roland. We'll be back on Anything Cricket. Let's talk. Just recently, we had the shocking news of the death of former Barbados and West Indies fast bowler Ezra Mosley. And more recently, we've heard of the death of the former secretary of the Barbados Cricket Association, Basil Matthews. Two gentlemen, Ayana Holder, who no doubt have made significant contributions to cricket in Barbados and even at regional level. The news certainly was shocking, Wayne, and I suppose that many of us are still somewhat affected and dazed and in a state of disbelief. Put the career of Ezra Mosley and his contribution in perspective.
I don't know if you believe in coincidences, Philip, but as it turned out, in the midst of all the what eventually transpired into a historic victory for the West Indies in that first Test match of the Bangladesh series, we had this tragic occurrence of Ezra Mosley's untimely death. And then, as I said, coincidentally, the next weekend, we lost another stalwart of Barbados cricket in Basil Matthews, again, around the time that the West Indies were creating even more history by whitewashing Bangladesh on their own soil. But to get right back to Ezra Mosley, the shock of Ezra Mosley's death, though, it is taking some getting over for me, because, you know, I regarded Ezra Mosley as a friend. Now, myself and Ezra Mosley, we never called one another every day, and sometimes long periods will pass before we have any interaction. But still, I regarded Ezra Mosley as a brother in the cricket fraternity. You know, he was one of those persons whom conversation was easy. It was an easy conversationalist, you know, and he made quite a lot of sense in discussing cricket. Again, like you, like I, a real lover of the sport of cricket, and one who was always willing to do whatever he could and to give whatever he could towards the development and the improvement of cricket at all different levels. Ezra Mosley, you know, when I got the news of his death, my first reaction in reflecting on him was a gentleman. No, not a gentleman, because there are a lot of gentlemen who are not gentlemen. But Ezra Mosley was a gentleman. I've never heard Ezra Mosley raise his voice. A fierce competitor on the cricket field, though. I had my first meeting with Ezra Mosley on the cricket field at Lenin A. Him playing for BCL and me playing for YMPC. And I mean, there were no friendly exchanges while we remained on the field. As Ramosi was out to get you every single time every time he put that front foot down on that bowling crease, it was about getting you. It was either getting you by licking down your stumps, breaking off your edge, ripping off your pad, or maybe licking you down. But once we got off the field, a different personality emerged, and it was really amazing. Then I got to interact with Ezomosi on another level. Then when he got into commentary, where he was one of the analysts in the days of both radio stations carrying cricket commentary first class and otherwise. And I had the opportunity to work with him at that level. And we even developed a different relationship. Now, this is an off the field relationship. And that is where the discussion about cricket and the discussion of taking cricket forward would have come about, And it is a pity that he lost his life in circumstances doing something that he loved. As Yomozi, that I knew was a lover of fitness and staying fit and being the best person you could be. And my last meeting with him actually would have been pre this COVID situation. Initially in last year, where we regularly met on the beach at Bronx Beach. As he would do a lot of swimming, he was into swimming. I would be walking in the sand and trying to work up a little sweat. But as Mosey was part of a group who did some distance swimming too. They would leave and go out. I don't know where they ended up, but I knew that sometimes within an hour, I didn't see them come back yet. So he was also a part of that fraternity, that fitness fraternity on Bronx Beach on evenings, and he will certainly be missed and in all those different areas. Basil Matthews, again, a person whom I never really got very close to, but a person whom I developed quite a lot of respect for over the years in his capacity working as secretary of the Barbados Cricket Association. And he was one of those kind of people who are hands-on person. Basil Matthews is the man who you will see around the clubs on evenings when teams were practicing and the like, because there was something that either some information he wanted, he needed to get, or there was something that he wanted to offer to the various clubs and the like. He was one of those well liked, I must say. He was very well liked by the cricketers and those in the cricket fraternity, and a man who did tremendous work. I mean, when you talk about fixtures and what I particularly admired about Basil Matthews was he had time for the junior clubs. He looked out for the junior clubs. He didn't necessarily, have pay any more attention to the established elite group of clubs, the community clubs, those of the country, I think. Basil had a special affiliation to those clubs as almost like the liaison between the management of the Barbados Cricket Association and the wider community group. So, like I said, I never got to know him very closely, very personally, but that respect for him was something that I developed just watching him operate. And I would like to, on the behalf of yourself and our team, the Anything Cricket Let's Talk team, offer deepest condolences to both the families and relatives and friends of Isa Mosley and to Basil Matthews.
Well, Wayne, well said. I can certainly support all that you said there as regards both gentlemen. I too would have had a pretty professional, a close relationship, professional and close relationship with Ezra Mosey in terms of commentary. Can't speak to any battles on the field of play, but certainly my affiliation with him would be mainly in terms of commentary, in terms of coaching as well, where I would have observed him coaching in different capacities. Of course, we would be heavily involved with the Barbados women, even at the West Indies level, women's cricket, and of course, in my capacity, in my other life, so to speak, I would be very familiar with what he would have done at the St. Michael's School. So certainly, I can support all that you've said. I also the opportunity to work with and observe the contribution that would be made by Basil Matthews. And again, you were quite on point with all that. So as you already did, just to endorse that, our condolences to the families of both these gentlemen. They will both be missed, but they both made significant and lasting contributions. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Join us again soon for another episode of Anything Cricket. Let's talk.